Truly we are thankful, and we want to begin our service with an invocation by none other than Bishop Owen Shepherd of the God Healing Temple. Welcome him as he comes.
Let us pray. Lord God, our Father, we thank you for this opportunity to gather in this place. We thank you for the reason that we've come together, celebrating the life, the legacy of Frederick Douglass. Lord, we ask that your spirit would move through this service, that each and every one will be touched, healed, and delivered by what is said here and thought here today. But Lord, let us be able to leave here with something more than what we came, and that is the spirit, and be willing to serve your people. Lord, give us a mindset to do what you have called us to do in this season. And we'll ever be so ever thankful for all things. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. At this time, we will have our scripture reading by Pastor Arthur Dilbert of the Abundant Life Faith Center. And immediately after, we will have our praise and worship presented by Full Gospel Tabernacle.
Psalm 121. Hear the word of God. I will lift up my eyes to the hills, from whence comes my help. My help comes from the Lord, who made heaven and earth. He will not allow your foot to be moved. He who keeps you will not slumber. Behold, he who keeps Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is your keeper. The Lord is your shade at your right hand. The sun shall not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord shall preserve you from all evil. He shall preserve your soul. The Lord shall preserve your going out and your coming in, from this time forth and even forevermore. Amen.
Let all the earth rejoice. He wraps himself in light, and darkness tries to hide. And tremble at his voice, and tremble at his voice.
We serve a great and wonderful God.
Amen.
And since we've already welcomed the Spirit of God in here, we're going to have none other than Dr. Marilyn Grant to come and give you your welcome. Amen. Immediately following her will be the statement of purpose by our own Dr. Jonathan McReynolds of Aenon Missionary Baptist Church. And after that will be the Aenon Missionary Baptist Choir. Say amen. Amen. Welcome. On behalf of our esteemed pastor, the Reverend Dr. Jonathan McReynolds, our beloved First Lady, Princess McReynolds, our officers, members, and friends, I say welcome to the Aenon Missionary Baptist Church. My friends, we'd like to think of Aenon as our earthly way station for spiritual soul recovery and wellness. And in the words of our pastor just this morning, we aspire to be a woke church. In the spirit of this occasion, and as people of faith, it is our hope that Frederick Douglass's words will still resonate and still serve as a clarion call. Brothers and sisters, we are keenly aware that before we can earn our heavenly reward, we must do our earthly duty. Douglass stated, "Where justice is denied, where poverty is enforced, where ignorance prevails, and where any one class is made to feel that society is an organized conspiracy to oppress, rob, and degrade, then neither persons or property will be safe." So my friends, again I say, welcome to Aenon, welcome to a woke church, and welcome to our collective work as the beloved community. God bless you.
All God's people say amen. It's good to be in the house of the Lord this evening for such a great and sacred occasion. Before I give a statement of purpose, I just want to briefly acknowledge those that are on the program for remarks, and I want to thank everyone for coming here today for this event. Dr. Andrew Ray, who is the 39th Grand Bosselist of Omega Sci-Fi Incorporated, a long-time community educator and a great man of wisdom in our community. Mr. Bruce Popper, who I got a chance to meet last year, who is one of our union leaders here in our community and advocates a lot for social justice. The next person, I had a little issue with him at first, Reverend Darrell Blue, when he first came here, because when I came to Aenon about 2 years ago, everyone was saying, he's so young, he's so young. And Blue's about 10 years younger than me, so he stole my youth card in the city, but we're glad to have with us, if you have not met him, he's a dynamic and wonderful pastor and leader in our community, Reverend Darrell Blue, the new pastor at Memorial AME Zion Church. Glad to have also with us, I believe, someone who was a transformative leader on our Rochester City School Board, Miss Beatrice LeBron, and we are excited about her role in the school board and looking forward to working with her. Willie Lightfoot, who is one of our new city council people, and someone right here in the 19th Ward, amen. And also Ken Morris and Robert Benz, who are with the Frederick Douglass Family Initiative Center. And we had a conversation about a week ago, and it wasn't really about this event. They were reaching out to me because they are looking at relocating their institute from Atlanta to Rochester. And so we got to talking about things, and Brother Morris is a descendant of Frederick Douglass family. And I was sharing with him how my grandmother's oldest sister was married to a baby who was in the Douglass family. So we found we cousins. Amen. So we're grateful for them being here. But the statement of purpose this evening is our esteemed mayor at beginning of this year, launched a year-long celebration celebrating the 200th birthday of Frederick Douglass. And we saw different segments of our community celebrating the life, the work, and the legacy of Frederick Douglass here in this city and what he has done across the nation, which is great. Let's just celebrate him. Frederick Douglass was one of the greatest transformative figures in American history and definitely in American history. Without his works, without his contributions to society and the struggle for equality, social justice, the abolitionist movement, our country would not be who we are today without his civic and social contributions. So it is only fitting that our community takes time to celebrate his work. But when we look at it from a historical context, it's hard to separate the work of Frederick Douglass from the Black church or the African American church. And I was in South Africa about 2 months ago, walking on Robben Island where Nelson Mandela was in prison, walking through the prison. And I was thinking about a lot of things, putting things in context, thought about Frederick Douglass, thought about our community. And I said to myself, I don't think the Black church has done anything collectively towards the Frederick Douglass celebration this year. And so I emailed the mayor's office while I was in South Africa and floated this idea. They said that would be wonderful to do this. It would be a travesty for us as the church and the faith community, not only to celebrate the life and legacy of Douglass, but to carry on the life and the work of Frederick Douglass. I said to our congregation this morning when I was preaching about the woke church, you get to a point of where you get weary of waking up in the morning and seeing on the news where young people are killed in our streets. You get tired of seeing the statistics about poverty and homelessness in our community. You see all of these social ills and things that are going on in our community, in our society. And we as the church have an obligation socially and morally, not just to pray for people, but to put our hand to the plow and to labor in the vineyard for social justice. I posed a question one time to a church that I pastored. I said, if the church were to close its doors today, would the neighborhood, the city, or the community miss the church? And we look around at all that's going on in Rochester, the ills, the vices, the things that we are struggling with, I raise a relevant question. If we were to close our doors, would the community miss the faith community? What are we doing to bring about social justice? What are we doing to bring about a better community? I was telling the guests in the back that I come from a background of growing up in the home of a liberation preacher. And I realized that when we go back 50 years, 60 years, 100 years, that Black churches were bombed over the right to vote and equality. We had preachers and leaders from our pulpits that led our communities and our nation toward social and transformative change. And I don't know if you're a Democrat or Republican, it doesn't matter. But I'm not going to wait on the White House or the governor's house to address something that we have control of in our own neighborhoods. It's not only time to look back and celebrate what has happened in our past, but it's time for us to come together collectively as a community, regardless of your faith, regardless of your indoctrination, regardless of your color, your social, economic background. We need to come together and make our community what God has called us to be. We have a mayor in office that's working diligently to improve our community. We need to support her work. We have a school district. I'm sure Ms. LeBron and Dr. Ray will speak to that. That's in a critical juncture right now of electing or bringing on a new superintendent of schools. I'm 47 years old, and I was informed that 40 years ago, the city school district was struggling near the bottom, and 40 years later, we're still at the bottom. I'll say this and I'll say that. I heard on the news someone was saying that we're making progress, we're removing the markers. Well, those of you that are Buffalo Bills fans and Browns fans, you know that sometimes moving the markers isn't enough. Sometimes you need a touchdown and you need to win the game. And if you can't score touchdowns and can't win the game, you get fired. So we're glad that you're here today. We're excited about what's going to happen in our community. And this is not just a one-time gathering, but we need your support in things that we're going to do in the community. So as you hear of town hall meetings, city hall meetings, board of education meetings, don't just be a spectator and read things in the paper, but get involved, get engaged, and as I said this morning, let's stay awake. Amen. Thank you for coming.
At this time, we will have two selections by Aenon Baptist Church Choir, and after which we will have remarks by Dr. Andrew Ray, Bruce Popper, Reverend Darrell Blue, Beatrice LeBron, Willie Lightfoot, and Kenny Morris, and Robert Benz. After the selection, please approach the podium in the order in which you are listening. Amen.
Can we give God praise, everybody? I'm glad to be in the service. Listen, I was a neighbor. I'm glad to be in the service. Amen. Give God praise, everybody. Come on.
Before I share with you, I would like for this church again to give a round of applause to our pastor here, because this young man has said what the church needs to do, and he stepped up to do it. That's one thing that's for sure. Frederick Douglass. I had the honor and the privilege, a few years ago, to be on a program with Reverend Al Sharpton, and we were both invited to the mother church where Frederick Douglass spent some time in New York City. And we were gifted with the Frederick Douglass Award for our community efforts around the country. And as I stood there and looked at the desk chair where Frederick Douglass sat, I thought, what else we're going to do to carry on this legacy? And as I read more about the life and times of Frederick Douglass, I found this to be true. He shared that as a young man, he was in the fields, and the overseer came by. And he said to him, "Take off your shirt, boy." He said, "Why?" He said, "I'm going to whoop you." He said, "But I haven't done anything." He said, "I'm a white man. I don't have to have a reason to whoop you." As the overseer drew back his whip that he carried with him from the hospital to strike him, Frederick Douglass said, "I was young and strong then. And when he tried to hit me, I grabbed both of his arms and I held him." He said, "I didn't hit him, but I held him as he was struggling." And he said, "Turn me loose, boy. Next time I come by here, I'm going to whoop you twice as hard." Frederick Douglass said, however, he never came back. Therein lies a lesson. The slave that's whipped the most is the slave that's whipped the easiest. The easier you are to whip, the more you get whipped. So I say to us here in Rochester, the pastor mentioned 40 years ago, that article I have been sharing around the city 40 years ago. When I started my educational career, Rochester was last. 40 years, this is 2018. 40 years later, it's still last. We have to have a light bulb moment. We got to wake up here. What in the world is going on? We're an $800 million budget. People with all of these degrees, masters and PhDs. You telling me in 40 years, been no change? We have to do that. And it's not just the board. You see, a community is known by the schools it keeps. All children belong to all of us. So we don't have to keep looking for consultants, looking for people all around the country to come and solve our problem, because one thing you know, the consultants go home after they issue their report. When they issue their report, they go home. And we are left here. And I tell you, community, if we allow this to continue to happen, it's our fault. The young people who are out there on the corner, they're out there for a reason. And just tell them to do the right thing, they ain't gonna do it. Some of those kids got $500,000 in their pockets from selling. Do the right thing, they got more money than you who talking to them. You got to do something else. And we got to stay the course. I'll close with this, because I know the pastor from the South. I don't have a deacon next to me, but they will pull your coat. I want to share this with you. Looking at education, I see it as a 440 relay. And one thing I have learned in a relay race, you can't keep going back to the starting gate after you run the first leg. If you don't run the 440, you can't win. And what's plagued this community has been always going back to the start gate. How many initiatives have we had in Rochester? Success for All, America's Choice, Bank Street Readers. And that going back to the starting gate will never let you finish the race. That's what we have to stop. We have to stop going back to the start again. And finally, I'll say this to you. Those young people who are out here somewhere across the street, that's moving across the street, I opened that school. Brought it on time and under budget. It was an international baccalaureate school. We got certification. Herb Austin, one of my teachers. Marilyn, who just spoke to you. We talked days and days and days about the IB, and we had certification on the first round. We closed the school. What in the world is going on? Our community, be aware of this can't do money. See, the signature program in education has been No Child Left Behind. But how do you get money? Somebody got to be left behind. And if nobody's left behind, you can't get the money. And if you get the money and get the kids up from being left behind, you lose the money. So it keeps you in the 360 circle. People, let's come together. Don't blame the school board. Don't blame the man. It's us. All of us. We have to demand what we want. We have to be the difference that we seek. So going forward, I pledge to you, I will continue to talk. I will continue to share. And we need you to do the same, because the young folks who come out of our schools, they're going to either say, ma'am, may I help you cross the street? Or ma'am, give me your purse. We have to decide what kind of young people we're going to have in this community. And I think that would be the tribute that Frederick Douglass would want. An educated, positive, caring community. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Do heroes choose their times, or do the times choose their heroes? In his time, Frederick Douglass was a towering figure, a true hero who defied all the odds. He was loved by many and hated by many, as all heroes are. And after the Civil War and the triumph of abolition, tyranny fought back. Jim Crow and a new repression replaced the old. And Frederick Douglass's remarkable life began to fade from public recognition. It was to be decades after his death that a new civil rights movement and a new workers' movement looked to history and found a hero in Frederick Douglass once again. In the 1960s, my union, Local 1199, joined with civil rights leaders to organize low-wage hospital workers in New York City and later here in Rochester. The union built a new headquarters in Midtown Manhattan, and above its entranceway, to this day, is a massive tile mosaic of workers with the quote, "If there is no struggle, there is no progress." Frederick Douglass. From time to time, I've taken my staff to Frederick Douglass's grave in Mount Hope Cemetery, and so it was on Election Day 2008 that a group of us visited the grave after reminding union members at the University of Rochester to get out and vote, our members. We believed that by the end of that day, history would be made with the election of President Barack Obama. And what better place to share that news than at the grave of Frederick Douglass? We left a number of items and then got back to work. Several days later, the poet Martin Espada made a pilgrimage to Mount Hope. And he wrote these words which I would like to share with you, called Litany at the Tomb of Frederick Douglass. This is the longitude and the latitude of the impossible. This is the epicenter of the unthinkable. This is the crossroads of the unimaginable, the tomb of Frederick Douglass, 3 days after the election. This is the world spinning away from the gravity of centuries, where the grave of the fugitive slave has become an altar. This is the tomb of a man born as chattel who taught himself to read in secret, scraping letters in his name with chalk on wood, now on the anvil flat stone. A campaign button fills the O in Douglas. The button says, Obama. This is the tomb of a man in chains who left his fingerprints on the slave breaker's throat so that the whip would never carve his back again. Now, a labor union t-shirt drapes itself over the stone offered up by a nurse, a janitor, a bus driver. A sticker on the sleeve says, I voted today. This is the tomb of a man who rolled back his call to arms off the press, peering through spectacles at the abolitionist headline. Now a newspaper spreads across his dates of birth and death, and the headline says, Obama wins. This is the stillness at the heart of the storm that began in the body of the first slave dragged aboard the first ship to America. Yellow leaves descend in waves, and the newspaper slug flutters on the tomb, like the sails Douglas saw in the bay, like the eyes of a slave closing to watch himself escape with the tide. Believers in spirits would see the pages trembling on a stone and say, look how the slave boy teaches himself to read. I say a prayer, the first in years, that here we bury the impossible, the unthinkable, the unimaginable, now and forever. Amen. That was late 2008, and just as in Douglas's time, tyranny fought back. It took back both houses of Congress and eventually the White House. It unleashed wave after wave of hatred and racism and suppression. And so it is altogether fitting that we call forth the name of Frederick Douglass today, a hero in his time and again in ours. I'm proud that our mayor and our city chose to honor the 200th birthday of Frederick Douglass, and I'm gratified that Pastor McReynolds and Aenon have organized this event, for the Black church has always been a home of the struggle for justice. There are no more important civic lessons than we can learn than those spoken and written by Frederick Douglass. So, let us do the impossible, the unthinkable, the unimaginable, by uniting all of the people in resistance to today's tyranny, by securing the right to vote, by putting justice in the criminal system, by establishing not only economic equality, but true equality, by making America a safe and welcoming place for all peace-loving people. Frederick Douglass said, the limits of tyrants are prescribed by the endurance of those who they oppress. So let's get busy. Let's get busy out there and fight back. Thank you.
To the angel of this house, Reverend Dr. Jonathan McReynolds, to the First Lady, to our speaker, the Honorable William A. Johnson, to all the clergy, civic leaders, all churches represented, community and friends, I greet each of you in the name of Jesus Christ. I stand today as one who is honored and privileged to express that I pastor the church which Frederick Douglass was a member. We know Frederick Douglass is a social reformer, abolitionist, great orator, writer, and statesman. And I thought about what story could I tell to kind of tie everything in, and I reflected on the story of three gentlemen who were friends. They were at a hotel, and the front desk attendant notified them that they had good news and bad news. And he said, would you rather hear the good news or the bad news first? They said, tell us the good news. The good news is that you have been upgraded to the presidential suite on the 31st floor. The bad news is that all of the elevators are broken, and you have to take the stairs up to the 31st floor. The first friend says, well, I'm going to tell funny stories all the way up the first 10 flight of stairs, and time will pass by quickly. So the second friend said, well, I'll take the next 20, the next 10, and I'll tell scary stories. And then the last friend says, well, I'll tell the sad stories on the last 11 flight of stairs. Time passed by, they joked, they cried, they had fun, but by the time they got to the 31st floor, the last friend who told the sad story said to everybody, do you want to hear the saddest story of all? He says, I just realized that I left the key at the front desk. There's something tragic about making progress and getting nowhere. I'm thrilled that we are remembering the legacy of a giant individual, one who believed in the equality of all people. Douglass spoke up and he spoke out against all injustices, stood up for women's rights, and he was one who was emphatic about believing that there could be a change. I want to say to us on today that I believe that Douglass would be ecstatic that his name has not been forgotten, but more importantly, that his mission is not lying dormant. The mission is not changed. We are still being called to activism. We're still being called to advocacy, and we must be communally engaged. I close with the words of the prophet Micah, and he says, what does the Lord require of you? But to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with God. Let the legacy continue.
So, first and foremost, thank you everybody for having me here tonight. Listening to all the speakers, and the first speaker, when he came back down and sat next to me, I'm like, I'm going to be saying something very similar, but against a little bit of what you were saying. So, first and foremost, I do believe that if there's no struggle, there's no progress. It's a saying that I actually have in my office. It guides and motivates me day to day to the work that I do serving my community. But what's happened in the district is beyond, at this point, the struggle. And so how long are we going to continue to accept the struggle, not only as a community, but as adults for our children? The district is at a 1.4. Our black and brown kids read at a 1.4 rate. That's it. We only have 1.4% out of 27,000 students. When Dr. McReynolds was talking about the statistics that would keep moving the needle, I absolutely hate hearing that from one of my fellow commissioners, primarily because he uses it to justify some of the work that he's done on the board from 36 to 59%. But I'm here to tell you that that 59% means nothing. Our kids are not college and career ready. So find out and ask, out of those 59%, how many are going to college? How many are starting careers? How many are becoming entrepreneurs? And that number is very low, probably less than 5%. And so the accountability is what I would urge and stress for you guys today. I say this all the time. I argue with my fellow commissioners all the time that the accountability falls on the board first. But I would also urge you all, as a constituent in this community as well, that the responsibility and accountability falls on you as well. You have an obligation to vote. That's one. That's the first piece of it. But voting is not enough. Don't vote individuals in and then not hold them accountable in their position. Don't allow them to be comfortable. Put your foot in their neck that they work for you. We work for the community, and if we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing for the community, I'm here to tell you, don't re-elect these individuals. No, we have a commission on the school board 20 years, but does not recognize that they have been a part of the dysfunction, that they should be accountable to the numbers that we have. It is like talking to someone, talking to the wall. They have no accountability to it. But I'm here to tell you that they do. And when I ran, I told people, in 4 years, if I don't make any progress on the school board, do not vote for me again. Like, we cannot afford to continuously vote the same people on the school board because we recognize the name. We have to recognize their name with the failures that are happening. And so with that said, I won't take up any more time. I thank you guys very much. I feel very honored to be here today, to be here with the Douglass family. And again, voting is one piece, but accountability is the second. Thank you.
I didn't do that. We just did that. No, I'm sorry. Let me fix this real quick before y'all start the clock on me. Only got 3 minutes, but I'm grateful for this opportunity. I want to turn for the scriptures real quickly because I think it just sums up what I want to say. It says in Matthew chapter 25, verse 34, "Then shall the king say unto them on his right hand, Come ye blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundations of the world. For when I was hungered, and you gave me meat. When I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. When I was a stranger, and you took me in. Naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came unto me." My statements today are very simple. I spoke this at my church this morning. The church has to lead the way. It's just that simple. The things that we're going through, there's 2 reports that were out. One, Beatrice and Ray spoke to earlier. The one I want to refer to you now is the 24/7 report that said Rochester was the worst place for African Americans to live. 70% of African Americans in this town don't own a home. When me and my wife, 20-something years ago, were going to look for a home, you know where we went? We didn't go to Urban League. We didn't go to some non-for-profit. We didn't go to some for-profit business. We came right here to Aenon Church. Aenon Church had a first-time home buyers class in the basement. Over 20 years ago, me and my wife came to the church to learn how to purchase a home, to learn how to bring generational wealth into our family. It was from the church. The church has always been at the forefront of social justice and equity change for people of color. The mandate that's been given to us by these reports, the City School District report that just came out by the distinguished educator, and the 24/7 report that just came out about the condition of the same things that some of the preachers that the Reverend was talking about earlier, and I'm commending him for doing this work because it should be right here at the church, is that years ago, Dr. Martin Luther King helped lead the charge for social justice of people of color. Then we see the voice of the church kind of dwindling. So I'm glad to be in a woke church today. Because to me, the reports are a mandate to every leader, to every person in our community, and especially to the church, that the mandate is, we see now what the needs are. In '64, we also had Reverend Franklin Florence, who helped lead the charge for better jobs, better education, same situations we're dealing with now. Housing, jobs, education. These reports are a mandate to us. We know what the needs are. We have to go back to what the Word of God tells us to do in that scripture and meet the needs of the people. And as we begin to meet the needs of the people, that's when we'll see the needle, so to speak, moving in a positive direction. So we have a mandate. I don't see it as a negative thing. I see it as opportunity. And each and every one of us have the responsibility to provide the needs of the people in our community who are struggling. Through what? Through programming. Like was done in this church years ago. Housing programming, credit programming, marriage programming, job readiness programming, life skills programming. The church should be at the forefront of this programming within our community, and then we'll see people coming, because we see they got the need. We know what the needs are. The data proves to us what the needs are. The question becomes, as we've heard speaker after speaker say, and as we heard what Jesus said, when I was naked, did you clothe me? When I was hungry, did you feed me? That what you do to the least of them, you do unto him. So God bless you is my prayer. Thank you.
My name is Ken Morris, and I am the great-great-great-grandson of Frederick Douglass. And I'm also also the great-great-grandson of Booker T. Washington. So let's just start with that first, because I'm sure the question is, how is it that the families came together? Well, it happened on my mother's side. My grandmother, Betty Hancock Washington, was Booker T. Washington's granddaughter, and my grandfather, Frederick Douglass III, was Frederick Douglass's great-grandson. My grandparents met in 1941 at Tuskegee Normal School and Institute. They happened to be on campus the same day, rushing across to get to the other side, literally bumped into each other. Didn't know that the other was a descendant from an historic family, and they fell in love at first sight and wound up getting married 3 months later. So I think that there was a plan that God had to bring these two families together. On behalf of the family of Frederick Douglass, Pastor McReynolds, thank you for hosting us during this bicentennial. It's very humbling to stand before you and to know that 200 years after my great ancestor was born, we're still talking about him, we're still being inspired by his words. But I want to make sure that we don't forget my great-great-great-grandmother, Anna Murray Douglass, because there would be no Frederick Douglass without Anna Murray Douglass. We are just as proud of her as we are of him. She was born free in Baltimore, and when Frederick was enslaved in Baltimore, he was working on the ship docks as a ship caulker, and faithfully taking his money back to his master every single day, Frederick and Anna would meet. And as they start to fall in love, she was the first person to plant the seed of thought in his mind. Frederick, you're not meant to be a slave. And as they start to fall in love, she said, Frederick, I don't want our children's father to be a slave. Had she not planted that seed of thought in his mind, who knows if he would have had the courage to escape? Had she not sold her personal belongings and her feather bed to help finance his escape and to sew the disguise that he wore, we would be a very different country today. And we may not be talking about the bicentennial of Frederick Douglass this evening. Both of my ancestors understood from a very young age that education equaled freedom. Education was their liberation and pathway to freedom. And for Frederick Douglass, when people would see him later in life and they would see the statesman with the white hair, who was the first African-American nominated for Vice President of the United States, first African-American Consul General Ambassador to Haiti, first African-American Recorder of Deeds for the District of Columbia, first African-American U.S. Marshal, first African-American to have a statue dedicated in his honor right here in Rochester in 1899. They would say, Frederick, I need to know, where'd you go to school? Where did you get your education? And he would respond on occasion by saying, my degree is written on my back. Frederick Douglass got woke at the tender age of 9 when he heard his master say education will unfit him to be a slave. And as he would begin to teach himself to read and write, he would start to think critically about his condition of enslavement and oppression. And he would ask questions like, why am I a slave? And why do you own me? And he would turn to God and he would pray for deliverance. He would pray that God would break his shackles. And he would ask God, he would say, I don't understand how my master puts on a suit every Sunday, goes to church, and in the Word and the Bible and the Scripture finds justification to brutalize, dehumanize, rape, pillage, and plunder his property. He starts to make the differentiation between what he would later call the pure, peaceable, impartial Christianity of Christ. And so as you heard from Pastor, Frederick Douglass Family Initiatives is coming back to Rochester. It's his adopted hometown. It's where he spent 25 years of his life. It's where Anna was a conductor on the Underground Railroad, ferrying freedom seekers through their homes so that they could make it to Canada. And as I understand, this community did something recently, and they renamed School 12 the Anna Murray Douglass Academy. So community, thank you for that. And so I'm going to turn it over to my co-founder, Robert Benz, and he can tell you a little bit about what we have planned.
In 2007, Nettie Washington Douglass, Ken's mother, Ken and I started Frederick Douglass Family Initiatives. We sat down and decided that we wanted to do something in the name of Frederick Douglass that would address some of our more difficult social issues. So we asked ourselves the question, what would Frederick Douglass do if he were alive today? So the first issue that we started on was the issue of modern-day slavery, human trafficking. We looked at the problem and how it was being addressed by other organizations and governments, and it was being addressed in a reactive way. And we decided we would go the opposite direction, and this is for Dr. Ray and Ms. LeBron. We decided that education, prevention education, was the most important start to preventing the problem of human trafficking, especially in young people. So we have, in the last 11 years, become one of the country's leading organizations in human trafficking prevention education. So that's where we want to start our next 11 years, our next 200 years, however long our organization will be doing what we're doing, and our next step is in Rochester.
So Frederick Douglass said it's easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. So as we're talking about what we're going to do to address the community issues that we see, the divisive rhetoric that's in this country today by so-called leaders, the systemic racism that continues to rage unabated, we need to make sure we're building strong children and teaching them about the life and legacy of Frederick Douglass. And I'll close by saying I love this quote that we've heard a couple times tonight. I prayed for freedom for 20 years, but received no answer until I prayed with my legs. Frederick Douglass was enslaved for 20 years, and when he finally had the courage on September 3rd, 1838 to run away, God answered his prayers because he took action with his legs. And so that is a message for all of us as we approach this work in our communities. And I'll just close here by letting you know that if you want more information on what we're doing, you can go to our website, which is fdfi.org/Rochester. Give us your email address and we will keep you updated on our plans. And thank you all very much. Thank you.
Drive
Amen. Speaker in the house this evening. His bio, his resume is in the bulletin. If you have lived in Rochester for at least 5 days, you know who the Honorable William A. Johnson is. He is someone that I consider a father, a friend, a civic and political mentor. One of the first things I did in coming to the city of Rochester was to jump on his coattail and to get close to Mayor William A. Johnson. He's someone that the Lord brought out of a place called Lynchburg. He survived a place called Flint, Michigan. And God ordered and ordained his steps to come to the city of Rochester. And 46 years later, the city of Rochester is so much better because of the labor and the work of the Honorable William A. Johnson. Let's celebrate. As I prayed and pondered about organizing this event tonight, I asked the Lord, I said, Lord, who has the voice for such an occasion? Who has the perspective to shed light in dark places? Who has the spirit of social and political authority to sound the trumpet? And I said, who can speak freely with nothing in the world to lose? And the Lord said, call your daddy. And I called him. So we're going to receive him tonight. But before he comes, the apple of my eye, the peach of my cobbler, the best thing that happened to me since Jesus, my wife is going to come and render a solo. And then the next voice we hear will be that of the Honorable William A. Johnson, the former mayor of the city of Rochester. Let's give God some
Oh, freedom. McCollough said, and no longer am I a slave. I'll be buried in my grave and go home. And go home. And go home to my Lord and be free, free,
Now, if I was smart, I would tell you, remain standing for the benediction. I never knew what a trick bag was. I heard that expression until this afternoon. First, Dr. McReynolds puts me in his seat. There's a camera up there, so I can't even close my eyes for fear that y'all think I'm asleep. Then he never told me he was going to have 7 keynote speakers in front of me. And then he expected me to talk after this wonderful soundboard. This has been a great program and celebration, and I certainly hope I can hold up my end of the bargain. You know, your former pastor, your 30 plus years, Reverend James Cherry, was a good friend of mine. He stood there in his pulpit many times, kept threatening to give me a license. And now I said, well, I'm gonna get a break. I'm gonna come over here, sit in the back, listen to this new preacher, and immediately was impressed. Not impressed enough to join this church. I told him, I gotta keep my eyes on the preacher on the other side of town, so I can't come over here. But certainly, I thank this man, this great man of God, is doing great work in this town. So to him, the pastor, and to all of the other clergy and official participants in this program, and to this assembled congregation, goes without saying that I'm both humbled and privileged to have the honor of addressing this important program. He's alluded to it, but several weeks ago, I was most surprised to receive a call from Pastor McReynolds from South Africa, where he was preaching a series of sermons across that vast nation as a guest of the Baptist Convention of South Africa. My first instinct when I heard where he was physically located at that moment was to think he was calling to compare notes from my own visit to that nation 23 years ago, in 1995, a year after Nelson Mandela's historic election as president. On that occasion, I was part of a historic delegation of U.S. mayors who spent a week meeting with newly empowered South African elected and business officials in the major cities of Johannesburg, Soweto, Durban, Cape Town, and Pretoria. While that was a grueling trip covering that much geography in 5 days, it is one of the most poignant and enduring memories from my 12 years in office. In actuality, he was calling to tell me of his vision for this very service and asking me to speak at it. The fruition of that vision is manifested in the reality of today's programs, wonderfully designed and community inclusive. And there are going to be people tomorrow, when you're going to tell about this, who are going to regret that they didn't come over to Aenon this afternoon. This is an important addition to the constellation of creative and informative programs and community-wide activities that have been presented during this year of tribute to one of Rochester's, indeed one of America's, most influential and iconic citizens, Frederick Douglass. It's worth remembering that 11 months ago, on January 4th, Mayor Lovely Warren and County Executive Cheryl D'Onofrio proclaimed 2018 as the year of Frederick Douglass in commemoration of the 200th anniversary of his birth. During her announcement, Mayor Warren observed that Frederick Douglass is one of the greatest historical figures of all time. It's important that we continue to remember the sacrifices he made during his extraordinary life. This significant anniversary gives us another opportunity to honor his legacy in Rochester and beyond. While this anniversary is being observed in many other communities around the country, it is extremely important that Rochester is the recognized leader of this celebration, as this was Douglass's adopted hometown for a quarter of a century between 1847 and 1872. And it is a place where his remains are interred. I can't tell you the number of people I have encountered over the years who are amazed and in complete denial about these facts. They assume that a man of his national prominence has been laid to rest in what they believe to be his true hometown, Washington, D.C. Every Rochesterian has the duty to set this particular record straight. Frederick Douglass is an important part of our community fabric, which cannot be snatched away. He helped establish Rochester as an important community in the 19th century, and Rochester was a major influence in his life. So it's good to see Ken Morris again, and his colleague from the Douglass Family Initiative. He and I have met briefly before, and over the years, I have been honored to meet so many other of Mr. Douglass's descendants. And of course, here in Rochester, we commune with the Sprague family, who his daughter Rosetta married into, most especially her descendants, Jacqueline and Kathleen. And I know that you're here for another great program tomorrow that will be at the Hot Stand. That will be one of the closing programs in this year of Douglass. And it would be highly disrespectful of me, Reverend Blue, if I did not invoke the name of the late Dr. G. Juanita Pitts, who devoted much of her life to maintaining the legacy of Douglass at his home church, Memorial Lane, Louisiana, and throughout this region. She devoted significant energy to keep that name and spirit of Douglass alive in his hometown. If there is anyone who wished they could be here today and involved in this celebration, it would be Dr. Pitts. I'm absolutely certain that she has been rejoicing these past 11 months in her celestial home. Her joy is only matched by the very alive, or what y'all say, woke, Dr. David Anderson, who has worked to frame the intellectual underpinnings of the Douglass legacy here in Rochester. He is a leading member of that class of Douglass scholars who have worked hard to ensure that Rochester never forgets the contributions of this great man and all of the other contributors to the liberation and security of those who fled slavery during the mid-19th century. The question must be asked, what is it about Douglass that continues to hold our attention more than 150 years after the height of his popularity and 123 years after his death? Why has this man's legacy been so enduring? He has been called, among other things, the greatest American of the 19th century, or one of America's greatest public speakers, one of the most celebrated orators and political theorists in the world. And nobody questions that designation as Douglass being a great speaker. There is not a single recording of his voice, and yet, but his prolific writings capture the eloquence of this man. Think of what would have happened if we had been in his presence to hear him deliver those powerful words. So he's gotten so many other praises that encomiums have during his lifetime and posthumously. But I want you to allow me to quote one scholar who captured this man's brilliance in a most powerful way. So I want to make my case for Frederick Douglass, not by quoting him, that's been done here liberally today, but to quote others who can speak to his brilliance and his legacy. This past August, in one of many tributes paid during the year of Frederick Douglass, Lawrence W. Reed wrote this in an essay entitled, "The Stirring Elocution of Frederick Douglass." He said, American history abounds with great orators whose eloquence roused the people and shaped events. Names like Patrick Henry, Daniel Webster, William Lloyd Garrison, Abraham Lincoln, William James Bryan, Susan B. Anthony, and Martin Luther King come to mind. The best of them spoke with passion because their words gushed forth from well springs of character or experience or righteous indignation. And in the case of the great 19th century abolitionist Frederick Douglass, all three, he could pierce the conscience of the most stubborn foe by what he said and how he said it. It should come as no surprise, this writer says, to learn that Frederick Douglass played a pivotal role in the transformation of the American conscience. For centuries before 1800, slavery was common in the world and widely accepted. 100 years later, it was mostly gone and everywhere condemned. Among those in America who helped accomplish that noble objective, Frederick Douglass used words as weapons to amazing and lasting effect. Now listen to these words. That a self-taught former slave would be so central in that achievement is one of the most remarkable ironies of our history. I want you to think about that. And if I was preaching, I would give this a title. If Frederick Douglass, with all of his limitations, could be so great, then there ain't no reason in the world why you can't. Former slave, without any formal education, helped to dismantle one of the most oppressive and dehumanizing systems that man has ever conceived. A former slave, self-educated and with passion and purpose, changed the world in a profound, sustainable, and consequential way. Now, to put Douglass's accomplishments in the appropriate context, all of his peers, most almost all of his peers were white men of achievement and wealth. And he was matchless. Not many of them could match his intellect, his brilliance, and his eloquence. Two of the greatest Americans of the 20th century in the field of social justice were Martin Luther King and Jackie Robinson. They were college graduates. Dr. King was born in a privilege. He didn't have to do what he did. He could have just stayed in Boston. He could have gone to Atlanta and preached in the comfort of a big church. He went to Montgomery and put him and his family's life on the line. But he didn't face slavery. He had education as a tool. He didn't have to teach himself to read. He was educated in the greatest universities in this country. Jackie Robinson, we forget, was not only a great athlete in 4 letters, but a graduate of one of the most prestigious universities in this nation. He had options. He didn't have to subject himself to the racial epithets that he was exposed to, pitchers thrown at his head, players coming in to second base with their spikes, to not scare him, but to maim him and harm him. He didn't face slavery. He didn't have to educate himself. And you can look at the record. There are many, many famous, powerful Americans who have never earned college degrees, but who have achieved great wealth and technological breakthroughs. The likes of Henry Ford, John D. Rockefeller, Steve Jobs, and Ted Turner. Just to name a few of the people who've overcome what seems to be the disability of no education. They didn't have to train themselves. They didn't face slavery. They accomplished. So we cannot diminish what this man had to endure to overcome the challenges, and not just merely to survive, but to prosper and to be a leader. So we come to this place at this hour to pause and celebrate this great man, this amazing Rochester, and this most influential American. Why this place? Dr. McReynolds stated it clearly in his invitation letter. The institution of the Black church, he says, has reaped inevitable benefits from the social activism of Douglass. History validates the irrevocable relationship between Frederick Douglass, the Black church, and the abolitionist movement particularly. Thus it is imperative the church at this juncture of history takes time to not simply honor his past legacy, but to also renew our commitment to fight for social justice and change. That is for the benefit of our people and the greater community. Now today's program is added to the long and impressive list of public remembrances in this year of Frederick Douglass. The University of Rochester awarded him an honorary doctorate degree at its commencement in May. The first and only time in its over 170-year history that it is given a degree to a dead person. A new book, Frederick Douglass, Prophet of Freedom, by historian David W. Bright, was recently released. Dr. Bright will be the featured speaker at tomorrow's Hochstein program. There has been a spirited debate among other scholars about the importance of Douglass's work to contemporary culture. You don't have to take my word for it. Just go to your computer and Google it and you'll see it. It just spews forward. Frederick Douglass, pages and pages. Not history, but a man who's been dead for 123 years. People debating his importance, not in the 19th century, but in the 21st century. How many people can even go to their graves with the expectation that somebody's going to be talking about them years after they have died? No, let's just talk about them, but look up to them, admire them, and respect them. All of the public monuments that exist here and across the country. I went online. There were so many you can't even count the number of Frederick Douglass bridges and schools and parks and plazas and statues. This man is widely remembered. Yes, today's program is a celebration, but I believe that Pastor McReynolds has something more productive in mind. Again, in his own words, to inspire the black church to continue to persevere and lead the struggle for social justice in the greater Rochester community. Celebration is fine, and there's a place for it, but there's also a time to get out of your seats and move from hand clapping and foot stomping to hands on and boots on the street. We shouldn't even have to debate that. We've heard it. Other speakers have talked about our school district and the rate of poverty in this community. And Councilman Lightfoot referred to the 24/7 Wall Street report. This came out a few days ago. And Councilman, you're my friend and my barber, and I love you. But we weren't the worst city on that list. There were 15. We were the 14th worst city. So there are 13 places worse than Rochester on that list. We have to remember that sometimes. And I don't like self-flagellation. I don't like to keep beating up on myself. You know, find some good somewhere, all right? So I don't need to recount the school district's problem and the poverty campaign's inadequacies. If you've somehow been on vacation from this planet and missed the news, just Google it. You'll be able to read all about it. The designation as one of the worst communities for African Americans may catch some of you unaware since this news was first published during the Thanksgiving holidays. And the DNC was so quick to put everything else on page 1, they buried it over there on page 14. You had to really be reading the paper to see that story that day, because you see it reflected on them, not just on us. It said the metro community was one of the worst places for African Americans to live. So I'm going to be keeping my eyes on that one. But I tell you what, I lived here a long time. I didn't need to read a newspaper story to tell you that this wasn't a good place for African Americans to live. I'm from the South. I know what bad looks like. And people delude themselves that we are north and everything is fine, but it's not. So now, December 31st is rapidly approaching, and the year Frederick Douglass will come to its official close. Then the question to be answered is, what's next? Well, we have a real choice. We can pat ourselves on the back for a wonderful year of programs, and even take credit that the knowledge of Douglass's good works has been exponentially increased. We can even look for the next wonderful celebration to make ourselves feel good. Or we could do something really profound. We could get off our tails. Can I say that word? I could have said donkeys, but I say we can get off of our backsides, and rather than bemoaning how bad things are and continuing to get worse, we can decide to make things happen for the better. We don't need to look too far for examples of how engaged citizens working together to achieve a common objective can make positive things happen. After the election of the most arrogant, egotistical, misogynistic, bigoted, and ignorant president in the U.S. history, y'all know what I'm talking about. I don't need to call his name. I just said bigoted and ignorant, that ought to be enough for you. But after his election, hundreds of thousands of women marched on Washington the day after the inauguration to display their shock and disgust. But they didn't just protest. They didn't go down there just to march. They came home and they worked to organize their communities. They began to become engaged. They began to organize communities. And what they said was, we're going to get women involved, all right? We're going to take care of our business. We're going to take care of our business. And they truly believed that political institutions were conspiring against their best interests. So starting with the state elections in my home state of Virginia, just last year, women almost took over the House of Delegates in the Virginia legislature because of the number of them that were elected and thrown out old men, old tired men who had stayed over their time. They didn't say, Virginia is our victory. We got a bigger mountain to climb. 2018. And what did they do? Hundreds of women from all backgrounds won an election for the first time. And now they said, hey, we ain't stopped. There's another one coming up. Because now they understand that you can sit there and weep and moan and cry, or you can get off your tails and do something about it. Think about in Florida and Georgia, two of the reddest, deepest southern states there are. We had the inspiring candidacies of Stacey Abrams and Andrew Gillum running for governor would have been the first time. And they didn't get close enough. They got almost there. But you know that in horseshoes, you got to put that shoe on the ring, not next to it. And they learned something. They didn't sit there and cry on election night. They said, yes, we're disappointed. We were ready to win. But you know what? There's another election coming. And now we know all of their tricks. We know all of the tactics they use to keep people from voting. So we're going to go to work. We're going to get off our tails and make some change. Here in Rochester, we have mastered the art of complaining and finger pointing. We are famous for saying what the school system is not doing to educate our children, but what are we, parents, civic and religious business people, willing to do besides pointing a finger? As Dr. Ray says, this education thing is hard. And you got to work every day to keep the right people involved. We have become accomplished at talking about how poor people need to do more for themselves to escape poverty, without realizing that it's hard to overcome a society where all the jobs that they can do have been either eliminated or moved way past their bus stop. And everybody's telling, let's get up here. The minimum wage, I know Bruce, my friend, we're going to talk about this. But we need to get people to understand, $10 an hour, that's $17,500 a year if your employer lets you work that many hours. And they control it. How many people? I listen to young people all the time. They get up, get on a bus, go across town to Henrietta or Greece, take them 2 hours to get there. As soon as they walk through the door, we don't need you today. Go back home. All right? When most of us in this room go to work, we sign an implicit contract. We know that we're going to work 8 hours or 7.5 hours or whatever every day, and at the end of 2 weeks, we're going to get a paycheck. It's not going to fluctuate unless we really abuse the process. And here are people that we say need to do more to help themselves, who keep getting the burdens of society piled on their shoulders. So I say to all of those business people who complain, give these people some jobs, all right? Give these people some jobs. Now, when they don't come to work, you get something to complain about. But we need to end these barriers. So we need to stop complaining, and we need to do something about it. Let me cite in closing two very, very quick examples. One is old, and one is recent. One is here, and one is another place. So back in 1985, we instituted something called a call to action to improve the quality of action, a quality of education in the Rochester Public Schools. Dr. Ray was part of that, and other people. My friend out here, Dr. Reverend Highway, and other people I know, Janice, we had a lot of people who came together. And what that was, they didn't come together to say, what does the school have to do? We brought every player into the process. Parents, teachers, students, even students, paraprofessionals, community leaders, social agencies. And we went through a process. And I'm not one who likes to go back to olden days, but there's something in that process that we can learn from, and that is holding everybody accountable. And when that report was published, after we went through a year of community work, it was published, and at the time we had both the morning and afternoon paper, and they graciously agreed to print the entire report. And one night I was out in the community, and to show you how things just circle around, talking about that report. I went to the Cornhill, there was a church, it was called then Cornhill United Methodist Church, and I was presenting this report. And there was a lady known to me, I knew her very well, sitting in the back. She sat there, she had a little cap on. As I talked, she was listening, she was going through the report. She said to me, and this lady was the grandmother, Pastor Robinson, Ms. Mildred Cox. Now some of y'all will know her because her husband, Reverend Julian Cox, used to be on the radio every Sunday. Mrs. Cox said words that I have never forgotten in 33 years. She said, Brother Johnson, I've been looking at this big report, and I just try to find one or two things in this report that I can do myself. What I can do myself. And that's what I'm going to do. You got my word on it, Brother Johnson. I'm going to do this. And we took that. Mrs. Cox did not realize that she was inspiring a movement. And we had the newspaper reprint the report in sections. And the chairman of our committee got up, we had a big community meeting, and he said what Mildred Cox said. He said, go find the section of the report that applies to you. If it's a teacher, if it's an administrator, if it's a school board member, if it's a city council member, if it's the mayor, if it's a parent, find that section because they're all labeled and cut it out and glue it to the mirror in your bathroom. So that every day when you shave and put it on your makeup, you will be reminded what your job is. That's what we have failed to do. We start giving people jobs. We keep dumping it over here. So that's what I would say. We need to go back to that kind of model. And I'm going to say something right in the closing about it, and very explicitly. The second thing just happened. Is anybody in here from Sanford, Florida? Sanford, Florida. You know, at one point in time, half of the African American population of Rochester was from Sanford, Florida, at 50 cents. And I got called there to do some consulting work in the last few months. And Sanford is not only famous for a place which transfers people between Rochester and Sanford, but it was a place where Trayvon Martin was killed. And that shooting, even though the police were not involved, it brought out pent-up tension that existed. The sister may know there's a community there called Goldsboro. It's a neighborhood in Sanford that had once been an independent, majority black city. And it got forcibly annexed into the city of Sanford back in 1910. And when the city did that, they went in and changed everything about that black community. Changed all the street names, eliminated all the institutions. And there's nobody, I figured this out, there's nobody today alive who was alive in 1910 when that happened. But you have a conversation with people in Sanford, and it's like it just happened last week. The tensions are palpable. So they finally decided we got to do something about this. And part of the problem with the police, and they decided to bring in a third party to come in and work with them. Well, that happened to be me, and I went there and I spent months and months sitting with people. And the point I'm making here is a call to action was a big thing. Hundreds of people coming together in big places. This little group, we call it the Sanford Police Community Engagement Project, started out with 50 people, ended up with about 35. And there, before we started, people were complaining all the time about the police, what they did, what they didn't do. But there was no communication between the sides. And we just consciously worked the system, bringing them together, getting to be comfortable with each other. And when I left there in June, they had worked to put on 4 community projects of their choosing, not of my design. Things that they needed, bringing young people together with the police department, creating better accountability systems. They worked it out among themselves. And what I have discovered late in life is a lot of people talk around each other. They are, we have such great means of communication now. People text and whatever they do, Instagram, all that kind of stuff. But they don't talk to each other. They could be sitting right next to each other, texting each other, sitting right next to each other, rather than turning, looking them in the eye. And we force them to put their technology aside and go back, share a meal, sit down, find out about it, talk to this person, tell them about your side of the equation. So my thing is this. These problems are not insoluble. I know, Commissioner, I sense your palpable frustration, and I know, I talk to Councilman Lightfoot all the time about things that's going on. But we are not without hope. We are not without hope. And any time that you think that things are bad, I want you to imagine in your mind a young man who was smart enough to know that he shouldn't be a slave, but who the system was determined to keep oppressed and in chains. A young man who had, for a short time, a kindly white woman, the wife of one of the slave masters, who thought it would be nice for her to teach this young Frederick a few words. And when she stopped, he kept going. He got sent to Baltimore rather than to Birmingham or Biloxi. And he met Anna. She was freed and she helped him. And any time that you think that things are so bad that they are hopeless, I want you to imagine the worst situation possible. And then think about it, how people have overcome. We hear people say it all the time in church. They pray. They said, all right, I was sick. My body was racked with pain. I put my faith in God and things changed. Well, let's put our faith in people. Let us now decide that we can work across the aisle with each other. So I noticed at the end of this program, Pastor, you have here a altar call. Community altar prayers. I don't presume to know what Pastor Walker is going to say during that prayer. But let me just say this. I ain't going to do it. Don't think I'm going to do it. I stay in my lane. I know what lane I'm in. But I'm making one suggestion. I know this. People in my church, they get up and go up to the altar call. They go to ask God for something, for good help. Help me over this problem. Help me in my marriage. Help me with my wayward grandchild. This time when you come to the altar, tell God, God, I'm woke. I'm ready. Send me. Get off of your tails and on your feet.